Danes se pogovarjamo o tehnologiji. Govorili bomo o več stvareh. Načeloma v mojem uvodu se bomo posvetili tehnološkemu delu, kot zadeva recimo temu programsko opremo ali pa računalničarje oziroma vse ljudi, ki se velikokrat oglašajo na teme o umetni inteligenci in se roko na srce včasih obnašajo, kot da se ne morete pogovarjati z njimi, ker razumejo in vejo nekaj več. Potem na koncu, v drugem delu bo pa Vladan pokazal na to, da so te stvari veliko širše, da ne glede na to, kaj bom jaz zdaj tukaj poimenoval kot tehnologije, je v bistvu en čisto majhen delček tega, kar se zares dogaja in o čem je treba razmišljati, ko govorimo o umetni inteligenci. In zdaj za začetek se je ta teden zgodilo nekaj, kar je super za to predavanje, in sicer Nobelova nagrada za fiziko, kar je pomembno, da je šla za fiziko, je šla za temeljna odkritja in izume, ki omogočajo strojno učenje z umetnimi nevronskimi mrežami. In zdaj, par stvari je tu pomembnih. Ena je ta, da je ta nagrada sama po sebi malo kontroverzna, ker je zgodovina strojnega učenja z nevronskimi mrežami polna ljudi, ki ne citirajo drugega, pa malo plagiate objavljajo in tako naprej. Tako da veliko je povedanega o tem, če koga zanima, bo ziher lahko našel stvari. Druga stvar, ki je tukaj pomembna v luči tega predavanja, se mi zdi, da je ta nagrada šla za fiziko, za izume, ki so bili izvedeni dejansko kot del fizike in nevronske mreže, ki se še danes uporabljajo za ogromno simuliranja fizičnega sveta, tudi v argumentaciji, zakaj je bila ta nagrada podeljena, je veliko omembe pri tem, kako se nevronske mreže oziroma en specifičen način delanja umetne inteligence uporablja za fiziko. In zdi se mi pomembno, da razumemo to, da ne glede na to, da te stvari danes uporabljamo na 101 način, imajo neko svoje mesto v neki zelo hardcore ozki znanstveni sceni. In tam so mogoče relativno neproblematične in da veliko problemov nastane, ko začnemo to kar uporabljati za stvari, bi lahko vulgarno rekli, za katere niso bile mišljene. Druga stvar, ki se je zgodila ta teden, ki je omenjena že v argumentaciji za to konkretno Nobelovo nagrado, je pa polovica Nobelove nagrade za kemijo, ki je šla pa za napovedovanje zgradbe beljakovin oziroma za tako imenovan AlphaFold. Torej ta teden oziroma letos smo dobili 1,5 ali pa 2, če hočete, Nobelovi nagradi za stvari, ki imajo veze z umetno inteligenco. In zdaj, AlphaFold je nekaj zelo specifičnega, ampak zelo popularnega, dejansko je revolucioniralo veliko stvari, ki se jih izvaja v biologiji, uporablja metode, ki jih uporabljajo tudi sistemi za klasifikacijo teroristov. Ampak spet, mogoče najverjetneje ima svoje mesto v neki zelo specifični disciplini, kjer lahko deluje jasno. Ampak je tukaj zelo pomembno, da ti dve nagradi za fiziko in za biologijo nikakor ne smeta pomeniti, da so te tehnologije dobre za karkoli. Torej kdorkoli bi se probal sklicevati na te Nobelove nagrade in rekel, ja, umetna inteligenca je super, saj je 2 Nobelovi dobila letos, ta izjava sama po sebi nima smisla. Zdaj pa, če kar začnemo s tem, kar vam jaz želim povedati. Načeloma bomo zdaj šli čez par besed oziroma terminov, zato da si zgradimo nek slovar, ki ga lahko uporabljamo, ko razmišljamo o teh stvareh, pa ko se pogovarjamo z računalničarji. Prva stvar je algoritem. Velikokrat v medijskem pisanju, pa publicistiki, pa tudi v raznih press releasih se beseda algoritem uporablja skoraj kot nekaj magičnega, nekaj, kar je zelo težko razumeti. Samo po sebi v bistvu ne pomeni nič posebnega. Pomeni samo nabor navodil za to, da se nekaj zračuna. Dejansko je beseda prevzeta iz arabščine po rojstnem kraju oziroma prebivališču enega matematikov, ki je napisal knjigo o algebri, in algoritem samo pomeni, kako neko stvar narediš. In zdaj tukaj desno imate sliko ene igre za otroke, kako se otroke lahko učinkovito nauči, kaj algoritem je. In ideja je, da če zdaj želite tole deklico spraviti do tega fantka, lahko igrate na ksilofon po pravilnih barvah in pripeljete deklico do tja. In ta pesmica, ki jo zaigrate, je algoritem, kako se tja pripelje. In če pravilno postavite te Lego kocke, to so, mislim, da sicer duplo kocke, lahko pesmico zaigrate. Ne. In je to algoritem, in to je vse, kar algoritem pomeni. Tako da kadarkoli nekdo govori o nekih hudih algoritmih ali karkoli takega, najverjetneje to besedo uporablja, da bi zakril ali zakrila, kaj se dogaja v ozadju. Druga stvar, ki je zdaj zelo pomembna, se mi zdi, naprej malo od algoritmov, ker algoritmi so načeloma natančno navodila, kako nekaj izvedeš, je strojno učenje ali pa machine learning. In zdaj, direktne definicije za to ni nikjer, kjer bi bila objavljena. Jaz sem eno sestavil, ki se mi zdi dovolj uporabna za nas in hkrati dovolj resnična, da je kvalitetna. In strojno učenje je skupek praks, ki nam omogočajo induktivno sklepanje s pomočjo računalnikov. Torej, računalniki kot logične naprave so nam vedno lahko rešile logične enačbe deduktivno, če se da zračunati, a je nekaj res, a in ne a je ziher narobe. Tukaj nam pa omogoča strojno učenje, da v situacijah, kjer ne znamo napisati analitičnega pravila, kako nekaj je, lahko pokažemo ogromno količino primerov in bomo na podlagi tega lahko dobili nek induktivni sklep, ki je dober ali slab, in o tem se lahko pač pogovarjamo kot filozofi zelo, zelo dolgo. Zdaj, pogosto se te stvari uporabljajo za računalniško razvrščanje, klasifikacijo, kategorizacijo raznih vnosov, ali slik, ali teksta, ali videa, ali česa tretjega. In to počnejo na podlagi primerov, namesto natančno določenih lastnosti. To je zelo uporabno za oblast, zaradi tega, ker definirati, kaj točno terorista dela terorista, je zelo težko. Ne bomo se mogli glede tega zediniti. Ima pa oblast moč, da določeno količino ljudi označi za teroriste, legalno, nelegalno, legitimno, nelegitimno, potem to skupino ljudi pokaže računalniku in reče, daj mi take ljudi ven. Medtem ko nimamo nobene garancije, da so to dejansko teroristi ali da te stvari, ki so jih pokazali računalniku, dejansko kažejo na to, da bo nekdo razstrelil hišo. Zdaj, tipična vprašanja, ki se lahko tukaj rešujejo, prvo je, kaj je črta na sliki. To je relativno enostavno, če imate samo črne in bele piksle, si verjetno predstavljate, da bi lahko rešili z algoritmom, če je zraven še en črn piksel, je verjetno to del črte. Če pa vprašamo, kaj je pes, pa ne moremo zares samo na podlagi slikovnih pik tega izvesti, zato razvijamo metode, kjer pokažemo milijon psov in milijon ne psov, prekrižamo prste in v večini primerov to dela. Poudarjam, v večini, ne more delati vse povsod. Imamo tudi vprašanja, ki jih probajo rešiti, ki delujejo bistveno bolj absurdna, kot je recimo, kaj je jeza, ali pa kaj je pornografija. In načeloma se klasifikacijske algoritme da sestaviti, kako bodo pa dobri, je pa drugo vprašanje. In tukaj imate desno spodaj zdaj par primerov. Imate recimo, to je iz enega dataseta, iz enega vira podatkov, ki se uporablja za učenje. Eating, ta ptiček je, ta zebra je, ta muca po moje ne je, ampak pač trola to hrano in jo bo dol pometla s krožnika. In pol imamo pač professional, je ta gospod z očali in tu so neki motorji, in pri fresh imamo zelenjavo v vrečki, kar bi jaz se vprašal, a je zares sveže. In pač ne moremo drugače učiti teh stvari, kot da pokažemo 100 primerov, in ko delamo te primere, si verjetno vsi sami lahko predstavljate, kaj vse lahko gre narobe, ko take stvari želite narediti. Funkcija izgube je ena stvar, ki je zelo pomembna, da jo razumete, pa ni zelo komplicirana. Ko mi pokažemo psa, pa rečemo algoritmu naj nariše kvadratek okoli psa, moramo nekako zračunati, kako zelo pravilna je ta napoved. To bi moralo biti intuitivno razumljivo. In potem načeloma si izmislimo različne funkcije in različne načine računanja tega. Za klasifikacijo slik oziroma za detekcijo objektov v slikah uporabljamo tako imenovan IOU, intersection over union, oziroma presek nad unijo. Pogledamo po domače povedano, koliko se prekrivata naša resnična napoved in to, kar je računalnik naredil. Problem z vsemi temi funkcijami je to, da lahko sestavite rezultate, ki so intuitivno napačni, pa imajo isto kvaliteten rezultat. Tukaj spodaj vidite 3 slike, 2 jabolk, ene pomaranče in ene banane. In vse te 3 označbe imajo dovolj dober rezultat IOU, pod 0,5. In ta prva, to je jabolka, to je pomaranča, to je banana. Zgleda ok. To je jabolka, pa je malo okoli še prostora, ajde, to je jabolka, pa je malo pomaranče not, v redu. To je pomaranča in to je banana in zgleda ok. Ta tretji je bad shit crazy. To zgoraj je jabolko, to naj bi bila banana, pomaranča je sam v levi tretjini pomaranča in banana, ta druga, je cela označena kot banana. In zdaj po to tipično metriko IOU je ta desna označba isto dobra kot leva. In to je samo en specifičen primer. Imamo načine, kako zdaj ta konkreten problem rešiti, reče se formuli Krippendorf alfa, podrobnosti res niso pomembne, ampak kar želim povedati je, da tudi Krippendorf alfa ima svoje probleme in trajalo bo desetletja, preden jih bo nekdo pogruntal, potem bodo rekli, dajmo to tako računati zdaj. In recimo ne glede na to, da danes obstaja Krippendorf alfa, 90% algoritmov, ki delajo ta Computer Vision Object Detection, bo še vedno uporabljalo IOU. Tudi ko boš objavil znanstven članek, boš poročal IOU, ker je to postala standardna praksa. In zelo, zelo težko je take čist neumne stvari umakniti ven iz tega procesa raziskovanja in produkcije kode. In pač kadarkoli se recimo ukvarjamo ali pa želimo kritizirati algoritme, je ta funkcija izgube oziroma cost function zelo, zelo dober teren, kjer se da preizpraševati, kaj točno se dogaja in na te stvari zares delajo ali ne. Naslednja stvar, ki vam jo želim pokazati, je, o kateri se velikokrat govori in je načeloma pomembna, se ji reče vložitev, v angleščini se temu reče embedding. Torej, računalniki delajo samo z enkami in ničlami, vsaj ti navadni, ko jih imamo mi. In moramo najti nek način, da stvari, ki se zgodijo v svetu ali ki jih želimo opazovati ali klasificirati, prevedemo v to. In teh stopenj prevodov je več in vsakič nekaj izgubimo. Tipičen primer, recimo, ki je trenutno aktualen v skupnosti jezikoslovcev, je vprašanje, kaj narediti z govornim posnetkom. Zaradi tega, ker trenutno, ko raziskujemo govor, večinoma vzamemo govor, potem ga pretipkamo ali pa uporabimo računalnik, da nam naredi transkript, potem pa ta transkript obravnavamo s tehnologijami, ki smo jih zadnjih 50 let razvili za obravnavanje pisanega jezika. Kdorkoli je jezikoslovec, vam bo povedal, da je to veliko težav. In pač vprašanje je, kaj so vse te stvari, ki smo jih najprej izgubili s tem, da smo zvok premaknili v tekst, da smo potem tekst procesirali starimi metodami, ki so zapisano besedo, negovorjeno in tako naprej. Tako da vedno bomo nekaj izgubili in postane pomembno, kaj bomo izgubili. Tudi slika je dvodimenzionalna, pokadrirana in tako naprej in počasi dalje, ampak čisto na koncu se bodo pa stvari vnesle v tako imenovano vložitev. Ponavadi se uporablja zaporedje številk. In tukaj imate en zelo enostaven primer. Torej, izjava je to be or not to be, ima 4 besede, be, not or to, in se pač odločimo, da jih bomo najprej razvrstili po abecednem vrstnem redu in potem vsako besedo predstavili 4 številkami in enka bo tam, kjer je ta beseda. Torej, to postane nič, 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 ena, be postane ena, nič, 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 or postane nič, nič, ena, nič, not postane nič, ena, nič, nič, ker je v drugem stolpcu, tu je spet zadnja enka, pa bi je spet prva enka. In to je zdaj reprezentacija teh besed. Vprašanje pa je, koliko je kvalitetna in koliko je koristna. Izkaže se, da so te stvari velikokrat presenetljivo dobre za raziskovanje nekih osnovnih stvari. Tako da zdaj vam bom pokazal en primer. Upam, da vsi vidite še vedno moj zaslon. Kar lahko počnemo je, lahko napišemo besedo, ko smo enkrat vse te vložitve naredili, recimo mati, in potem pogledamo iz vseh teh tekstov, ki smo jih porabili za to, da smo to naredili, katere besede so najbližje tej besedi po teh številkah. Zračunamo razdaljo, tako kot zračunate razdaljo med 2 točkama v koordinatnem sistemu v osnovni šoli. Mama je najbližje, potem pride ata, hči, babica, sestra in očim. Če napišem pa oče. Moram stisniti play. In zdaj te stvari ne odražajo dejanske resničnosti. To odraža samo tekste, ki so bili uporabljeni za to, da se je to pogruntalo. Imamo pa ata, mama, pa imamo pa deda, sin, brat in stric. In pač nismo samo enostavno zamenjali spola na vseh teh družinskih odnosih, kar bi pričakovali, če bi pač želeli to narediti na roke in smiselno. Ampak smo dobili razdalje med tem, kako se te besede v vseh tekstih, ki so bili uporabljeni, nahajajo blizu ali daleč. In izkaže se, da v veliki večini primerov za veliko takih foric, pa pesmic, pa podobnih stvari je to dovolj dobro. Niti približno pa to ni dovolj dobro, da se odločiš, ali bo nekdo dobil dodatek za nezaposlenost ali ne. In to so zdaj vložitve, ko vam govorijo o vložitvah, govorijo o tem, to je nekaj, kar se tudi splača pogledati, kako dela. Nikoli ni pomembno, katere te številke so. Res, nihče jih ne gleda, niti računalničarji, pač pomembno nam je, kakšni so na koncu potem rezultati. Zdaj pa the big one, umetna inteligenca. Tokrat bomo začeli s sliko na desni. Jaz sem šel na Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, ki je načeloma kar kvaliteten vir, poiskal umetna inteligenca, našel članek, ki je imel drugo poglavje z naslovom What exactly is AI? Kaj točno je umetna inteligenca? To je bilo na 5. strani od 8. Bilo je dolgo 2000 besed, imelo je 12,000 znakov in še vedno niso na Stanford Encyclopediji pač uspeli pojasniti, kaj to je, ampak samo razpravljajo, zakaj je to nemogoče povedati. In ta beseda že v angleščini ima veliko težav, ker se beseda intelligence uporablja tako za inteligenco kot pamet človeško in živalsko, kot informacije, na podlagi katerih je možno nekaj narediti. In pač artificial intelligence, ko rečeš to na CIA 40 let nazaj, je imelo drugačen prizvok, kot ko to rečeš danes. V praksi še računalničarji zelo redko uporabljajo umetna inteligenca oziroma znanstveniki v svojem poklicu. Jaz trenutno delam doktorat na FRIU, in imamo fake konferenco s sošolci enkrat na leto, kjer imamo kategorijo, da zberemo, ali smo umetna inteligenca ali ne, in pač 90% mojih sošolcev dela umetno inteligenco. Načeloma. Ampak jaz procesiram stare zgodovinske časopise, nekdo drug pa proba ločiti srčni utrip zarodka od matere, takrat, ko se pač to dela v bolnici. In pač ti dve stvari nimata skoraj ničesar skupnega, onkraj tega, da padeta v to veliko področje umetne inteligence. In zaradi tega načeloma pač jaz govorim ljudem, da se ne splača tega obravnavati kot nekaj kompaktnega. Tukaj je par besed ob strani oziroma besednih zvez, ki se uporabljajo. Ekspertni sistemi so načeloma sistemi, kamor napišete pravila, pa se potem na podlagi tega odločijo. Bayesian inference je sam pač način, kako se dela statistiko, tako kot jo je delal gospod Bayes. Collaborative filtering je to, kar vam recimo priporoča filme na Netflixu, kjer pač ljudje, ki so gledali podobne filme, so gledali tudi druge filme in to pač ni nekaj, pač to je res glupo, na roke pa na papir lahko to zračunate. In na koncu veliki jezikovni modeli oziroma LLM-i, kar je zadnja točka mojega tega uvoda. Zdaj, najprej, kar želim reči, je, da bolje kot large language models, veliki jezikovni modeli, bi bilo reči veliki tekstovni modeli, large text models. Ker jezik je veliko več, ne? Jezik pač ima govorca, ima slušatelja, there's a whole thing, pač ful je tam okoli se dogaja, ampak ti modeli modelirajo tekst, besedila, ki so jim na razpolago. In meni se zdi, da je to pomembna distinkcija, ki nam olajša razmišljanje o tem, kaj se dogaja. Druga stvar je ta slika na desni, kaj je ta pošast, to je metafora, ki zadnje čase postaja vedno bolj popularna za LLM-je in to je šogot, ki je pač literarno bitje tako amorfno, kot pač res ogromna ameba, ki kar posrka vse, pa nima nobene prave podobe. In ti veliki jezikovni modeli so to in potem dobijo eno masko človeškega izraza na obraz, zato da mi z njimi uporabljamo, ampak načeloma ti modeli ne delajo veliko drugega, kot vzamejo malo bolj sofisticiran način tega demoja, ki smo ga gledali prej, če se spomnite, torej približevanja besed, in se sprašujejo, katero besedo naj naslednjo napovem. Torej, namesto da nam dajo tukaj besede, ki so podobne besedi mati, jim damo not 5 besed in jih vprašamo, katero je naslednja najboljša beseda oziroma najbolj verjetna beseda, da se tukaj pojavi. Zdaj, razlog, zakaj to dela, je pa ta čudovit Shakespearov citat, da je ves svet oder. Kar se v ozadju ChatGPT-ja dogaja, in jaz ne morem poudariti, kako zelo neumno enostavno je to, je v tekstovnem fajlu se začne scenarij, tako kot je drama, ki ste jo brali v srednji šoli. In razlog, zakaj to dela, je, ker obstaja dovolj dram in scenarijev, ki smo jih lahko vrgli not, zato da je naslednja beseda najbolj smiselna, taka kot sledi v scenariju ali transkriptu pogovora. Če bi nekdo izumil računalnike, grafične kartice, vse, kar je treba 500 let nazaj, ne bi imel dovolj dram in filmov napisanih, ne bi mogel narediti ChatGPT-ja, tudi če bi imel vse drugo. In pač različni material, ki ga daš not, lahko proizvede različno obnašanje, ampak na koncu res vse deluje na tem, da imamo kup enih tekstov, ki so dovolj podobni. In zato, ko ljudje rečejo, da model halucinira, je narobe, ker pač nikoli ne govori resnice. Res edina stvar, ki jo naredi, je, da napove naslednjo besedo. Čudovito je in mind-blowing, da to dela tako dobro, kot dela, ampak dajmo ne pozabiti, da dela slabo. Tako da lahko se temu čudimo, kako je lepo, ampak je v krajni fazi še vedno relativno neuporabno, ker ne zna razmišljati, it's doing nothing. Okay. S tem jaz zaključujem in bom predal situacijo Vladanu, ponavljam pa slajd iz Minine prezentacije prejšnji teden. Umetna inteligenca ni niti umetna, ker je resnična, ker je odvisna od veliko stvari, ki se dogajajo zunaj tega softvera, niti ni inteligentna. Upam, da je to danes še en znak, kako je to res. Zdaj bom pa jaz končal in povabil Vladana, ki tega nisem povedal na začetku, morda sem, bo svoje stvari delal v angleščini. Vladan, upam, da si razumel vsaj koliko toliko, pa da ni bilo preveč dosadno.
Yes. Okay. This was really great, Philip. So, yeah, really nice to be here. Sorry for speaking in English, but my Slovenian, it's not so good. So my name is Vladan Joler. I live in Novem Sadu, and I'm professor at the Academy of Art here. But basically for like a long time, I'm doing some kind of investigations that are related with artificial intelligence. And basically we started 10 years ago with investigation of one single internet packet. And somehow this journey of different kinds of investigations led us more, deeper. And basically what I'm doing now for many years, it's some kind of critical cartography, and somehow it's mostly about AI now, like for last 5-6 years. So I'm going to share with you my screen, and there we will try to see some of those maps. And those maps are, don't be afraid, they are like, yeah, it's a lot, but yeah, so basically I do some kind of investigations, and then at the end of investigations, I'm trying to draw the different kinds of maps. So for example, this one, it's like now, I don't know, like I think we did this in 2014 or 16, and this is one map of algorithmic process inside of Facebook. So it was called Facebook Algorithmic Factory. And basically there we try to use all the tools we have and everything we know in order to draw this map that starts from left, like what kind of data they're collecting, and then how they're processing data, what kind of algorithms are being used, and then at the end, how they're using this data to create this kind of like a final product, that in this case, it's some kind of like our profiles and so on. So my work, it's about some kind of transparency. So what we are doing is basically investigating different complex systems and then trying to create those kind of cartographies, maps of those things. But so the next one after this one was called Anatomy of an AI System, and I think I'm going to speak mostly about this one today. So basically, for 5-6 years, we were basically just investigating this one line. And so what is this? This is like basically idea was, okay, like the device back then, this was like 2018, no? And back then the really popular product was Amazon Alexa, basically Amazon Echo device. That's some kind of smart speaker or something like this, no? And the idea was like, okay, let's try to draw some kind of like a extended anatomy of one device. So because like what we have in our hands, usually when we are interacting with an AI, it's usually just some kind of interface. So when you are interacting with, I don't know, ChatGPT, it's just some kind of like text interface or whatever it is. But basically the real machine, the real device, it's somewhere far away, no? So we wanted to draw this map and to try to sketch like how the real anatomy of this object looks like. So basically it's starting with a device that we have it in this case Amazon Echo device, and then we can speak about like many different layers of untransparency that we can see there. So for example, it's really hard to open. Even if we open, it's hard to understand what's going on. It's like you know, it's even illegal to have maps of those devices in a sense of this kind of like to fix them. So there is like every time we step into another layer of this complexity, we will see some kind of also layers of untransparency, you know. And then from there you go into this device is connected with your router, and then your router is connected to another invisible you know, infrastructure. In this case, this is like internet, and then we spend a lot of time like investigating how, you know, how we can understand this network, you know. So for example, this is one we did some kind of like a trace routing and made some kind of I don't know, like internet topography of one internet service provider, and then how they're connected together. Then there is like kind of like thousands or millions of kilometers of like cables and submarine cables, optical cables, and so on. So this is like, and then in every of those layers, you have basically different kinds of relations. So for example, here we can speak about like relation between governments and internet service providers. We can speak about relation between different internet service providers. But anyway, there is some kind of a lot of power there, because like each internet service provider and basically each dot in this network have a power to block something, to filter something, and so on and so on. And then from this complexity, we are diving into another hidden layer, and this is basically, so basically internet is how this data from us to this like AI system or whatever it's flowing. This is this kind of like server and data centers. It's basically where the situation is really happening, where there is a real models or data being stored, and so on and so on. So then we investigated those like data centers, try to locate them, try to find them, and each of them is basically connected to an electricity. They need a lot of water, and so on and so on. But then inside of this data center, you basically have different models, different algorithmic processes, and basically this is where the things are starting to be really hard to investigate and really hard to understand, because okay, now we located where the AI is, but to go deeper, it's almost like not possible, and this is like why it's being called a black box, no, for many different reasons. But if you go even deeper, then you will understand that behind of this model there is a training process, no? So for example, like for this kind of new large language models, you need like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, and now even millions of like you know, some kind of processing units. Back then it was some kind of NVIDIA something. Today it's, I don't know, NVIDIA A100 and any other model. But in a way now we are entering into some kind of another infrastructure. This other infrastructure, it's like training infrastructure that is basically different than this kind of operating infrastructure, no? But for training infrastructure, you need immense amount of like processing power. So basically now they're saying like, I don't know, they basically, the new models will need new amounts of electricity. And then they're saying they are even now like building some kind of like nuclear power plants to power those like training systems, and so on and so on. But behind now this like technical infrastructure or processing infrastructure, you need to have a data, basically. And then you can go further and further and ask, okay, now what is behind data? You know, how this data is being made. And basically it's being made by scraping and by collecting millions of books. So there is a big, let's say, now it's some kind of like, this is like a new form of extractivism in which they are now trying to extract as much as information and data exist in the present, but also in the past. You know? So you can go deeper and deeper and go further and further into this process and ask yourself, okay, what is needed? What we need in order to create one AI? And that was like this middle line of this map that we were like basically doing for years. But then there was some kind of crucial moment in which we started to think, and there is like one fantastic book that is called Geology of Media from UC Parica. And he was saying like, okay, let's try to think about the media or those infrastructures in not from the position of extension of human senses, but basically from the position of Earth. And then we were like thinking, okay, all of those like servers, all of those like infrastructures, if we rewind like 30, 40 years ago, all of them were like different kinds of rocks, because in order to create one of those like NVIDIA cards, you need certain kinds of rock. And then we said like, okay, let's start from there. And this is this part of the map that we called birth. And let's start with the periodic system of elements. And then we started to do different kinds of investigations on like the materiality of those devices and infrastructures. So basically in one mobile phone or in one this kind of NVIDIA card, you have basically 3/4 of periodic system of elements. No? And then if you start to follow this kind of genesis of that infrastructure, of basically genesis of AI in that kind of material sense, you need to start with an elements. No? But then those elements are located, those mines where those elements are being digged are located on different parts of the globe. No? And basically, if you start from that point of view, each of those elements have its own story. So for example, now in Serbia, it's like really highest political question is this question of like lithium. But if you go to Congo, you will understand, how many wars, how many conflicts are being created because of those elements. So we started to follow basically the trajectories of those elements and to draw this map. So the next step, it's mines, and then you can also deconstruct this like question, like what kind of hazards we have there, what kind of issues. So we have, I don't know, child labor in Congo, or forced labor, low paid labor, but we also have environmental costs because like we are basically destroying, like a earth in order to extract those materials and so on and so on. And then we try to tell this story by using this kind of like triangles that we took from Marx. This is basically some kind of like a dialectic of basically you have a resources, labor, and then product, and then this product, it's becoming a new resource, and then with another form of labor, another product, and so on and so on. And once we started to see the story from that angle, it's completely different than we had here, because here it's always about data, it's always about classification systems, it's always about I don't know what, but here it's about labor, it's about exploitation, it's about inequality, it's about ecology, it's about many, many different things. So basically then when you go, just to try to explain how complex is that part, we tried like last year, we did some scraping of, again, NVIDIA company and tried to understand suppliers. And then we scraped some website that is being used for this kind of like supply chain organization. And then we got some kind of like a table with 2 million lines in which we had like 200,000 different companies that are being part of this process. So how this kind of scale happen, it's basically you have like, for example, I don't know, like Apple have, for a phone, have like 250 suppliers, first suppliers, but then those 250 suppliers have their own 260 suppliers that have their own 260 suppliers. No? And then if you start, when you go into that, you realize it's some kind of like fractal system. No? And it's really, really, really hard to investigate. But in a way, so if we look, we try to think about that, so it's not just this is some kind of like a black box. Also, the production of those infrastructures and systems and models, it's also black box. No, but to understand this left part, what is super important is to try to understand the scale of inequality, because those systems in production, they're based on inequality. No, they're based on basically extraction of inequality, in a sense that like people here on the bottom of this production process are earning maybe like $1 per day, $3 per day in like Congo, in many different places, and people on the top of these pyramids are basically earning unlimited amount of money. So I don't know, if we think here, because this is an Amazon system, so if we think, I don't know, Jeff Bezos, it's really hard to tell like how much this guy earns, but it is sometimes millions per day, no? So this is the scale of inequality that exists within this system, and so we tried to map how much people are earning in this process, and so on, so on. And then this is basically, there is 3 parts of this map. So on the left side it's birth, on the middle it's life, and then on the right side it's death. And what is that? Basically all of those devices, mobile phones, infrastructure, whatever, are being replaced really fast. So for example, just ChatGPT, I don't know which number, was trained on almost like, I don't know, tens of thousands of these cars, but now they're training on the new ones. So these ones are being replaced, and so on and so on. So this cycle is really, really fast. And then, so we start with geologic process, and then we end up here also with geologic process, in a way how all of those devices are becoming part of Earth again, by becoming some kind of electronic waste. And again, you have a lot of different hidden economies there, hidden jobs, inequality, and so on. So, and why this map, it's maybe still kind of relevant, is because still in like 2023, no, or 4 or 5 or whatever, it is still how this system is functioning. So basically when we were like starting to do that, this system was like functioning like really somehow smooth before COVID. So you had some kind of flow of those like elements moving around the globe and stuff like this. And this movement, it's like really, really important to understand, because like, you know, in each of our phones is basically traveled more than any of us in its own life, because like it's thousands of kilometers. Those like materials are just like going around the world all the time until they don't become those devices, no? And but the thing is like it is still really relevant, because like this is where the fight, or like this kind of great battle for AI domination, what is like happening now, this is where this is happening. So you have here some kind of like race to scrape all the data in the world, no? So they are like you know, trying basically to use all the books ever written, all the text ever wrote, all the photos, because like, for example, for all of those new systems, they're using, I don't know, photos from Flickr or whatever. So this is one battlefield. Another one is this one, basically. So how to dominate this flow of materials and production, you know? And now we have like several companies including, I don't know, NVIDIA, who is like in position to dictate the development of AI and establishing relations now with OpenAI and other companies. So another battleground it's here. But this is like international global war, like who have different materials, and now this like basically story it's starting to be complicated. So you can see in Europe this kind of like directives that are regulating how Europe will source these elements, and also like but then you have like in US versus China, some kind of economic war. So it's like really basically the AI domination war. It's happening all around the world, in a sense of like it's a geopolitical battle, no? So this is the basically this some kind of like a wide view on an AI system and what AI system means. So whenever sometimes, you know, like there is a lot of talk about AI ethics, and for me it's always the question, okay, AI ethics where in this map? Because like most of the AI ethics discussions are happening around data sets, like what is going on here. And this is like really relevant discussion, because like what is entering into data set will define what will go out of this system, and it will basically shape reality and shape our life according to that, no? But in a way, in order to understand AI ethics in some kind of widest sense, is basically to understand on the scale of this map, to understand that AI system, it's not just what's going on in the training process, what's going on in the data sets, and what is going on the surface here, but it's also like what's going on here in a planetary scale situation, no? So I found this map still like really useful to think about AI and to think what is AI, and this is some kind of like a I don't know, materialistic approach to understanding what is AI. It is basically to deconstruct the process of creation of AI, and then to try to understand like implication of each of those things. So we did also several others maps. So the previous one was in cooperation with Kate Crawford. This one was with Matteo Pasquinelli, in which we basically deconstructed this production process of one AI model, and then try to understand what kind of biases exist there, what kind of issues we have, and then basically once this model is being projected, what kind of reality it's basically creating. Another way to look at AI, but this is like really hardcore in a sense of the scale and everything, is this like a new one that we did with it's called calculating empires. So we did some kind of analysis of 500 years of all of those technologies, and but this is maybe too much for today, so I'm going to stop here. But anyway, if you have time and if you are interested in the history of those, or basically in genealogy of those technologies, you can also deep dive into this one. And for me, like what was like super interesting here was basically because there is a history. We dissected history of communication, history of classification, history of computation, and history of control, because all of those systems are ending up as a being part of different systems of control. And of course, this part with the control, it's the most sexy one, let's say. But for me, what was like really interesting is to deep dive into history of classification, because like basically all of those AI systems nowadays are basically automation of classification, no? But then deep inside of them, you have a different classification systems, no? So we try to deep dive in like this relation between classification and different kinds of political, economical systems. And it is really, it's really dark, but it's really interesting also to understand like how we end up here, how we end up with this classification system, because everything is classification. Gender, it's a classification system. Scientific racism, it's a classification system. Biometry is a classification system. So it is really interesting because we are entering into the age of automatized classification, basically face recognition, emotion recognition, all of those AI types of recognition are basically automatization of classification. So it's really interesting to deep dive and to understand like some kind of political background of that. All right.
Thank you very much. Hvala lepa.